It's going to South Africa to collect white people who claim they're being discriminated against. Why would they be getting discriminated against? Probably because they spent generations instituting legalized forms of racial segregation and discrimination called apartheid, aka Stephen Miller's wet dream.
If white folks that colonized a nation can be rebranded and called refugees and be given resources in another country, resources like jobs, housing, groceries, things that the citizens of that country aren't even getting,
they're not importing refugees, they're importing people with like-minded fascist views.
Well, aren't these just the healthiest looking refugees I've ever seen? The most nourished, the most well-kept, the cleanest, most well-dressed refugees I've ever seen. I've never seen such stunningly healthy, good-looking refugees in my life. Thank God America offered them refuge from South Africa. Thank God. They looked like they could not have even stood another day there. Thank God.
After witnessing the way that the Trump administration has made an entire spectacle of how they have decided to welcome this group of South African refugees, the Afrikaans, if you are still pro-Trump, and you're trying to convince me and any other person of color that you are pro-Trump while simultaneously not being a racist, you're a fucking liar. And one thing that I cannot stand is somebody who's going to lie in my face because you're insulting my intelligence.
Oh, this isn't about race. This is about racism. Taking brown people and actively removing them from the country, whether they have a criminal history or not.
So word on the street, well, actually it's facts, but word on the street is that El Salvador will no longer be taking in our American criminals, migrants, homegrowns, whatever Donald Trump wants to call us, blindly at least anymore. They will now be requesting that all American criminals that are being sent to El Salvador have in fact received their due process and have in fact actually been found guilty for whatever crimes that America says that they've committed. Again, like I stated, they're no longer blindly taking in our migrants, our criminals, our homegrowns. And this is all due to the fact that they will no longer be receiving this UN check for $300 million that they were promised. So I know you guys have heard that part of the reason why El Salvador was even agreeing to take in our criminals and our migrants and send them to their mega prison was because Donald Trump was paying for them to do that. But see, the check is not clearing. So El Salvador is like, hold up, run it back. We're not getting our bread. So if this is going to happen, we're no longer just blindly taking in these residents. We need the proof now. And considering that the LA Times have reported that 90% of migrants that are being shipped over to El Salvador do not have a U.S. criminal record, I think that El Salvador is kind of making the right call by demanding proof. Proof that these people are actual criminals. Proof that they received their due process. Proof that they actually gotten, you understand, their constitutional rights met. Now, this part I have found to be more speculation. However, other sources are stating that the real reason why El Salvador is starting to take this more lawful stance is because the U.S. and El Salvador is currently being investigated by the International Criminal Court for what they're doing with this whole transfer of American migrants and criminals to El Salvador's mega prison. Especially since the international shame of what El Salvador and the United States is doing with these deportations has grown astronomically. The UN publicly denounced and shamed their actions, calling for them to reverse the policy. And a lot of people believe with that type of heat, that type of pressure, that type of attention, that the international criminal courts have now begun to, see if they can open a case against what El Salvador and the United States is doing with these deportations. Now, like I said, that second part is speculation. I have not found evidence or information documents that have confirmed that to be 100% true. However, that sounds more plausible It sounds more plausible. I definitely do believe that, if El Salvador is not getting their $300 million, they're definitely not going to be taking any of our people. Like, blindly? Hell no, they're not. Why would they do that? Why would they add on to their population with our criminals? If they really are criminals, why would they do that? Why would anybody do that? Part of the reason why the ones that are there is because they've been paid for already.
Whether they're American citizens or not, babies that are American citizens, children with cancer, absolutely not a single olive branch to them. Don't give a shit. But when it comes to that color South Africans, all of a sudden we're taking them in as refugees.
I can't get over how our government made an entire spectacle of receiving this group of white foreigners. I can't get over it. I can't get over the fact that it was our tax-paying dollars, both documented and undocumented, because even if you're not documented, you're still putting money into the economy. You're still paying taxes for items that you purchase. It's our tax-paying dollars that help set up this whole spectacle of receiving these white foreigners. I'm not going to call them refugees, because how are you going to be a refugee when you were the oppressor in South Africa? You were the oppressor in South Africa. While being the minority, you and your race owned 70% of their land. But you want to come over here and call yourself a refugee? Nah. So the fact that these white foreigners are coming in, right? They were met with press. They might as well have rolled out the fucking red carpet for them. We had our actual government officials taking time out of their busy day with the state that America is in today. They decided that it was more important to welcome this group of white foreigners. And the problem is, this would not happen if it was any other group of people. And you know that. You know that. If it was any other race, you think they would be getting the type of welcome? The welcome committee, the welcome party? You think that they would have been welcomed with open arms this way? No, it wouldn't have been this big ass spectacle. I want you guys to look at this.
The first group of white South Africans granted refugee status has arrived in the U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau greeted them at Dulles Airport in Virginia on Monday.
The president made it clear that Afrikaners in South Africa who were the victims of unjust racial discrimination would be welcome to come to the United States. President Donald Trump has blocked mostly non-white refugee admissions from the rest of the world. But in February, offered to resettle Afrikaners, the descendants of mostly Dutch settlers. The move has drawn criticism from Democrats and stirred confusion in South Africa.
Because they're being killed, and we don't want to see people be killed.
Trump made those comments on Monday when asked why South Africans were being prioritized. He did not provide evidence.
White South Africans. It's a genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about, but it's a terrible thing that's taking place, and farmers are being killed. They happen to be white.
South Africa maintains there is no evidence of persecution, and that claims of a, quote, white genocide in the country have not been backed up by evidence. The once ruling white minority has retained most of its wealth amassed since colonial times and still own 3/4 of private land, with about 20 times the wealth of the black majority. That's according to international academic journal The Review of Political Economy. But the claim that white South Africans face discrimination has become an established trope in right-wing online chat rooms, one that's been echoed by Trump's white South African-born ally Elon Musk. A spokesperson for the U.S.
You see what I'm talking about? He suspended the application process for all non-white people. All non-white people. Meanwhile, this group of, and you see what they called them, Afrikaans. The term that's only for the white people, right? They were met with open arms. These are people that descend from German and Dutch descendant. Okay? They're welcome in America. And you saw what your president said. They're being killed. Meanwhile, here in ICE custody, a Haitian woman died. We still don't know what happened to her. You have people that are being picked up off the street for random shit and being taken into ICE custody where they're literally dealing with some of the most disgusting conditions, the living conditions. You understand? You have a government, an administration that's not only just taking you out and saying that you have to leave, but they're purposely bringing you to El Salvador to go and work in that mega prison. We have a 19-year-old Venezuelan boy that's in El Salvador right now when he was supposed to be deported to Venezuela. Why is he in El Salvador? Why is he in El Salvador? We have a 19-year-old student that's currently in ICE custody right now. A little Latino girl, Hispanic woman. You understand? Because they decided to take away DACA. So now she is undocumented. You understand? And they're refusing to let her go. God knows what they're doing to her. We had a green card holder, this Indian man. His name is Kunal Abori, 37 years old. ICE took him into custody for 2 months, and he's documented. But you saw the way that those white foreigners were being accepted here on American soil. Whose homes do you think that they're taking? Whose homes do you think that this administration is moving them into? Huh? Because I bet money it's some of the homes of the people that have been deported already. I bet money. Y'all can say it's a conspiracy all you want, but in order for us to make space for the ones that you want, you got to get rid of some, right?
They're not importing refugees, they're importing people with like-minded fascist views. The administration, AIPAC, everyone is having difficulty pushing people towards where they want to be ideologically. So they're trying to replace people and import people that have those same ideological views and thoughts that would help them with fascism and white supremacy. These are the dying cries of whatever the hell America has been. We're never going back to how things were. That's one thing I want people to know. There's no going back, there's only going through at this point. But this is very valid, saying that you suspect that they will get different positions and all that. Yeah, because they want people that are easy to control. And who's easier to control than people that already subject themselves to the ideology that there is a supreme order for white people, that they are oppressed, that they're facing quote unquote a genocide in South Africa. This coincides with Africa taking control over their own resources, really. And with Ibrahim Traore, you know, the movements that he's making, reclaiming his land, kicking out for the French, making sure that everyone knows that Africa is going to no longer be the world's slave for minerals, goods, resources, anything else like that. And what does America do? They're like, what if we start importing people from South Africa that had to quote unquote suffer, aka they stopped getting what they wanted from people of color, and bring them to America, bring people that have like-minded values.
You know, the very people who thrived on an apartheid system in South Africa. And what kicked this all off were the South Africans on this app that were like, hey, Americans, stop real quick. And these videos are of them literally telling Americans that these refugees that are coming in are not the best of their society. And I hope by now most people have understood that nothing that this regime does is by accident. It's on purpose. It's letting you know these are the people we consider refugees, but don't talk to us about Syrians. Don't talk to us about Palestinians. Like, don't talk to us about any of those. You know what? Because they're not the complexion that we give a shit about. Oh, and Ukraine, well, guess what? That doesn't bode well with our Ruski buddy. So guess what? That doesn't count either. Now, we want some strong segregationist roots returning to this country.
If white folks that colonized a nation can be rebranded and called refugees and be given resources in another country, resources like jobs, housing, groceries, things that the citizens of that country aren't even getting, Black Americans, now is your time. I left the United States in 2015 and have lived in 5 different countries. Your time is now. I am hosting a webinar. If you go to my bio, you can sign up. It is going to be a donation-based webinar, so you can donate however much you like. The donations are going to my passport initiative to continue to help Black people get their passport. I have lived abroad solo, as a mother, as a family. I have lived abroad employed and unemployed. You do not have to be stuck in the United States. You absolutely do have options, and you absolutely should utilize the resources that everyone else has been able to access to find greener pastures. If you're interested in my Move Abroad webinar, put in the comments if this is something that you would prefer to do over the weekend or something that you would prefer to do during the weekday in the evening. This webinar is going to be an hour long, and depending on interest and if people want to continue it, I can do it once a week to ensure that y'all get the resources that y'all need.
Damn, MAGA. Not you proving again and again and again why you needed them damn DEI courses. You know, we weren't trying to teach you about institutional racism to make you feel guilty. We were trying to stop you from being it. In case you don't know what you're doing to Latinos right now, that's institutional racism. And so how it works is that there's a pretext or story, and the pretext covers up the practice so the public look away. Like, for example, during Jim Crow, there was a pretext about vagrancy being illegal, but they just used that as a cover to practice re-enslaving black folks with chain gangs. In the war on drugs, they just used stopping addiction as a pretext to mass arrest black folks and just get us institutionalized and warehoused in prisons. Right now, the pretext is immigration and the border crisis and whatever, but since you don't want to learn history, you're gonna have to be a part of it. Do you get it now? This is how institutional racism works in America now. It's not like it was back in the day. If you fall for the pretext, you'll fall into the practice. I just don't know how short this cycle of history is going to be. You're going to have to explain this to your children a lot sooner than you think. You didn't want to listen, and now those evil white people in history that you don't want to hear about, well, you are now them. But I learned something. No matter how good I am at dialogue, it ain't never going to be stronger than your denial. And I realized how strong y'all's denial is because of George Floyd. He taught me a valuable lesson about you, MAGA. You see, it's not like the universe didn't give you opportunities to change your ways. You just wasn't strong enough spiritually to take the opportunity. Case in point, the real reason why the world got set on fire when George Floyd died was because his death was so egregious, all of our hearts were shattered. We were under lockdown and had all this pent up horrific energy, and then we see something terrible happen. You let right-wing media spellbind you and talk you into closing your eyes and your hearts. All you needed was a convenient escape. And escapism is what MAGA's all about. That's why you voted for Trump, to solve problems that either ain't even there or use the wrong tool to solve real problems. Either way, you in real trouble. Don't you get it? He is your fentanyl. And if you still think that George Floyd died from fentanyl, then you let me kneel on your neck for 9 minutes. Go ahead, lay down. Of course you won't do it, but I just gotta say, you know what these bleeding heart liberals have that you don't have, MAGA? A heart to begin with. You know what a heart's good for? Not just love, it's courage. In fact, love can give you courage when you don't have none. Since you shut your love down for the rest of humanity who don't look like you, well, now you lost your courage too. But don't take my word for it. In fact, save your words for how you're going to explain to your kids why you voted for this violence against American people on American soil. The same soil that our democratic ideals will be buried in now because of you.
I hope we are learning something from these compilations. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your love and support. Thank you for liking, subscribing, for commenting, for interacting with the content. I appreciate. I've been sharing videos on this platform about racism in the United States, and I can assure you that it's not a cool thing to watch. It's not. Yet sometimes we have to get uncomfortable to find the comfort that we need. Thank you so much for being here. Don't know what's your take on this. Now we have Africans coming into the United States as refugees. So that's what we have. This compilation was somehow one-sided because it just has people who are against the thought, who are mainly, I've realized that people who are on TikTok who have done videos and are against this, the arrival into the United States, are more than those who are appreciating the facts that they are coming. So that the energy, it's not really something that could be delighting to most of them, especially those who have been fighting this system of oppression in the United States. So I don't know what's your take on this. Share your thoughts in the comment section. For me, I'll just say the conclusive word that I heard from the last clip that spoke of no need for discrimination regardless of our skin color. We are just all human beings, and yeah, division won't lead us anywhere. So I hope things change. I hope the world will one day be accommodative and be able to embrace everyone regardless of their skin color. Sometimes I wonder what does color has to do with who people are. I am yet to find that answer.